This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and this episode is brought to you by Silna Health. That's S-I-L-N-A, the premium front-end RCM company that leverages technology with a team of onshore insurance experts to handle benefit checks, eligibility checks, and prior authorizations. Finally, a vendor that you can trust, like a full-time employee that scales with your business. Just mention the Profiles in Leadership podcast to receive a free trial. Today, our guest is Ja-Naé Duane and Steve Fisher. Ja-Naé is a creator, behavioral scientist, award-winning innovator, and 4 times entrepreneur with over 20 years of experience guiding organizations, institutions, governments, and communities toward a new renaissance and a better future for humanity. As an expert on global systems, she focuses on helping corporations, governments, and universities understand and develop systems of the future using emerging technology such as VR and AR, AI, and blockchain by guiding them forward, helping them get out of their own way to create exponential innovation and future forecasting. Ja-Naé holds degrees from Brown University, IE Business School, Northeastern University, Carnegie University, Bentley University, and Boston University. Ja-Naé is a member of the Loomis Council at the Stimson Center, collaborator with the National Institute of Health, and holds appointments at Brown University and MIT Center for Information Systems Research. And Steve is a visionary futurist, innovation leader, and design strategist with over 30 years of experience driving transformational change. Passionate about reimagining business models, he leverages cutting-edge advancements, especially generative AI, to empower organizations across industries to navigate complexity and seize future opportunities. Beyond corporate leadership, Steve is the managing partner of Revolution Factory, a global innovation firm that fosters cutting-edge solutions through AI, strategic foresight, and design thinking. He also serves as Chief Futurist at the Human Frontier Institute, where he explores emerging trends, conducts research on future-oriented challenges, and mentors leaders in strategic foresight. So welcome to both of you. Very impressive bios, I might add. So thanks for being on our show today.
Thanks for having us.
So let's just start right off with, the book, which you are co-authors of, and I'm just going to hold it up for those on video here. It's called SuperShifts, and it's transforming how we will live, learn, and work in the age of intelligence. Very impressive book. I would just tell you that going through this, it's one of those books where I feel like I got to read probably 4 or 5 times to make sure I get everything because there's so much in there. I kind of guessed that maybe the first draft was about 1,000 pages before you put it to your editor. Is that correct?
Wow. It's probably more, probably like 500.
Okay.
But the one thing Ja-Naé was insistent upon, which I love, is that in the early part is how to use this book around the letter, or I'm trying to remember where it is, but there's like 4 or 5 different ways to read it. To your point, like you read the whole way, or you get a few, and that's what we hope it to be. Is not only the best for summer reading list on the beach, but just this evergreen book that you revisit when you want some analysis. And we have a pretty good community, and we also share a lot of things post this book. So it's but it was definitely labor of love. We'll get into in the interview is the design fiction piece with the Sinclairs was that was the publisher. It went over our page count when you were asking about pages, but thankfully they saw the vision of it, and it's the thing that a lot of people really resonates with people. So in terms of how to introduce the book. So
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely. And that storytelling piece is definitely helps you kind of get your head around it. So
yeah,
that was a good choice. And
thank you.
Janine, you start out the book by writing a letter to your son Max.
Yeah.
So that was very impactful as well. And tell us why you decided to do that.
Yeah, I mean, when we think about what the future holds or can hold, uh, we really wanted to dedicate this to not only Max, but to dedicate it to all future children and for all readers as they're thinking about this to even put themselves in their children's shoes and their grandchildren's shoes and their great grandchildren's shoes and realize that there's an opportunity now to really reimagine what the world could be and that those are infinite possibilities, but we have to make some of those choices now. So we felt that the letter was a really great way to sort of kick that off and an extra dedication, if you will, through a little bit of storytelling in that letter to the children of the future.
Yeah, it's that was great, and it's mind-boggling to think, you as parents, thinking of your son and
Hmm.
the grandparent thinking of my grandchildren, and it's just mind-blowing to think what they're gonna do and what's gonna happen and
Yeah.
things that they're not gonna experience that we just think are every day-to-day things. It's crazy. So t tell us a little bit about, you talk about this humanity transition from one age to another, which you say has occurred historically, like every 200 years.
Hmm.
So you talk in the book about the adoption of, these technologies, are just, accessing us into this new age. So again, can we? And you talk about how it's shared progress. It's not something that just one person does. It's kind of shared through humanity. So
Hmm.
can we choose? Can we choose how this is going to go, or do we just have to get on and ride with it?
Well, I think that the whole premise of this is navigating uncertainty, but it's also designing the future. You need to not let the future happen to you. You need to actively participate in a as a futurist, we look at possible futures. We look at scenarios and different outcomes. We don't predict, but what I want to emphasize to the listeners here is that the future will eventually become the present. It's a question of which future that will be and how you address it and how you take advantage of it. And we call it, participatory futures, where you really want to be invested. Sorry.
No worries.
You really want to be invested in where things head. With that in mind, you know, this is a new age we call the age of intelligence. And it's not this like abrupt end. It feels very visceral because the rate of change that's happening right now, we feel it, we see it. The last age we call the age of engines, which is, the Industrial Revolution. As a macro historian, we went back about 1,000 years through these different ages, and we saw there's 50 years, 4 50-year eras in that. And one of the things that's powering, we call it the quantum era, is everything that's going to be transformational really comes back to quantum computing. And if you look at the progress of the last set of eras, this 200-year age of engines was really this set of factories. All of our institutions were built around it. Schooling, everything that we've had has been for that, and everyone's trying to retain that. But the distrust of institutions, the failure of them, is really not so much a failure, but a collapse into a transformation. So we're seeing just chaos in the world now. I mean, you could look at fourth turnings, other types of cycles, but what I want to encourage is that through this change, there is a whole new, spring instead of the winter. There is a spring. There is a new awakening and a new set of opportunities for us as humanity to move into a really a new way of being. So,
Yeah, yeah. That's very interesting. And reading the book, again, this is I was very intrigued with the topic because this isn't my normal everyday thing that I think about. So it was fascinating. But you talk about the emergence of, I learned a lot of words like, okay, I know what AI is, and I kind of get that, but blockchain, digital twins, fusion energy, quantum computing, those are all things that sound pretty impressive, but I'm not really sure what they are. So without going into too much detail, Ja-Nae, why don't you just kind of tell us what those are and how they have such an impact on our future?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of technologies to unpack, Steve.
Well, I don't, yeah, just
Yeah.
it's just, I think we
Yeah.
all know what AI is, right? Or what it's
Well, I
supposed
mean, but
to be.
even AI, if I may, I mean, there's different versions of AI. And so when we think about, and so let's just take AI as an example here, since it obviously is a major thread throughout what we're postulating in the future. So we are thinking about AI. There's different models. We have generative AI, which is really what all the buzz has been about over the past 2 years. And that's really what people are using in their work and in their daily lives, whether they're using Anthropic or they're using ChatGPT, or even if they're using Perplexity as a new way of Google search, right? Like or a new way of search instead of Google, I should say. So there's very sort of, we'll call them baseline models, where these models are built off of, they're trained. There's very much a human in the loop that is training them, and they're learning through human reinforcement, if you will. We also have semi-structured models that have a bit of human in the loop, but it's where AI is really learning a bit from the human, but also a bit from itself. And then we also have models for AI, which we will be moving more and more to. We have some of these models now, but we're not fully there yet. But these models where these neural networks, if you will, where AI is really learning and reinforcing its knowledge based on other AIs in itself. So that's just one example of a technology that is completely changing the way that, not only the way that we live, but also the way that we work. And to build off of some of what Steve has said, the rate of change when it comes to technology, and the rate of that growth rather, will never be slower than it is today. Like, this is the slowest that this technological growth will be. And what's really sort of jarring for us is we have come out of a 200-year arc that we very much have wrapped within the verbiage of the Industrial Revolution, or, multiple industrial revolutions. And all of our models, again, to build off of what Steve said, from our educational system to the city planning that we have, all of that is built around these centralized systems. So we have seen a shift in COVID, and we've seen that, wait a minute, there's new ways of working. We don't necessarily need to be butt in seat doing the same thing day in and day out. We can work remotely. What does this look like then from an organizational perspective, from a leadership perspective? And as we're seeing sort of this flux of organizations trying to bring people back into, back on site and back into these seats, instead of working remotely, we're seeing again that tension of, wait a minute, I have new ways of working. I'm able to work remotely, but also we as a team, we as a business unit, this can look differently for us. How I lead and how I manage looks different. How I utilize technology such as AI in my day-to-day, how we utilize technology within our business unit also changes, right? So, and I'll give you an example of this to bring it back to AI. A good friend of of ours, Dan Slagan, who's the CMO of Tomorrow.io, most of his team is actually focused in on their use of AI within their marketing team. And it's cut their budget and or the amount of spend rather that they would normally spend in trying to do, I'll say, a quarter of the things that they're able to accomplish now because they have incorporated AI as a member of the team inside of their marketing department. And they utilize that in many different ways. So I just bring that up as one example of all these different technologies that are really changing what the future is going to look like, because AI in many ways is or foundational to where we're heading and how we're using that right now.
Yes, so I think what you kind of said there too in that was too that we're moving from, as you said, this, centralized systems to more of a collective intelligence system where, as you said, as leaders, we have to be open to doing things in a different way and not just trying to force this new technology into the structures that we already have.
That is correct. And I love the fact, Steve, that you use collective intelligence. That's very much how I think about it. And it's actually my hope for humanity that we can really tap into the potential that I think we have from a collective intelligence perspective, and also how we can think about what that looks like with AI in symbiosis. So to me, the next 200 years are a pretty exciting time.
Yeah, it's exciting and a little scary, I mean, again, when you read the book, it's just the stories, as you said, the fictional stories and just the what ifs, are mind-boggling. I'm older than the two of you, but I can remember watching a cartoon back when I was a little kid called the Jetsons, and that was a cartoon that basically you're thinking, oh man, this is crazy, but it's not that far off what you were saying, in the book. So I just think it's interesting. So, Steve, another quote I pulled out of the book that I thought was interesting is the greatest technology is worthless without the wisdom to guide it.
Yeah.
So, as you said, we don't have to just jump on and hold on tight and let it go. We do have to be smart about it, and we do have to guide it in ways that, as Ja-Nae said, is good for humanity and not controlled by just a few.
Yeah, I think it's a challenge today because, well, as a human race, our technology way outweighs our wisdom, our ability. I mean, I often think about Robert Oppenheimer, and we needed to end World War II. It was in that moment, but they didn't know if it was going to burn the world, right? And it's like, you know, they let out that was out the genie is out of the bottle.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way with AI. We have to have ethics in place. We have to have laws for the systems, like the laws of robotics. We have to have laws for artificial intelligence so it doesn't turn into Skynet. I think that the uh, opportunity for us to connect to each other in different ways that we've never been able to do before would hopefully, change our level of empathy and our ability to think about how we solve the world's problems together. That's my hope for this,
Hmm.
instead of just, owned by a few tech oligarch bros that, want to control the information flow.
Yeah.
That's the bad thing. But in the next 5 years, just definitely 10, you will see robots. You're already seeing it now where they're putting ChatGPT or they're putting the AI into the robots to do, work. I mean, the
Yeah.
the first, that we may have a human colony on Mars, but we're definitely going to send a lot of robots there to do work. And
Yeah.
what does that mean to have a house robot, right? It's like that's what you're talking about, the Jetsons, right?
Right. Right.
Rosie the robot.
Yeah.
That kind of trust and companion that they're not going to harm the people in that house. I mean,
Right.
it's going to be hard for people, but at the same time, those who look at it with fear, those who look at it as opportunity, right? How do you change your business? How do you improve your life with it? And I think we all have to really work hard to understand what this does for us. I think we need more than ever the philosophers, the artists. Those are the kind of people I want to go to Mars. I don't want just the scientists and the engineers, which is important if you want to live, but we need the artists, we need the philosophers, we need the people who can give us the insights to think about this so that we can have the wisdom to use this stuff properly.
Yeah, I interviewed, my background is healthcare, and I interviewed a physical therapist researcher yesterday. And he was talking about his specialty is home care. And he was talking about, and you reference it in the book as well, like, the coming not too distant future where you could actually have a robot in the home of an elderly person to take
Yes.
care of their daily needs so that they could stay in their home longer. And the cost for that robot is probably going to be eventually much less than putting in some assisted living facility that is brick and mortar and a lot of people to make it run.
Yeah, we both have, and Jenny can talk about this too, in some of the research she's done in the healthcare space. I think there's gonna be a blend of things. Our reality remix chapter, you know, giving the elderly or other people connection through like VR, being able to just say if you're bedridden or you have to rehab, being able to like experience VR and to be able to do things instead of just staring at the bed, looking at the ceiling, because it's tough adjustment.
Yeah.
We have family members. We have one family member who will probably eventually need care. It would be great if there was a care robot that was in the house, because if any of you on listening have seen the movie Her, if you haven't, I suggest you do it, because we're closer to that more than ever. But forming emotional attachments to these companions, right? Physically but digital companions is going to be a very real thing. But you're right, the expense of home care is astronomical. I'm sorry, of living care is astronomical, and it's unsustainable, especially as we have a lowering population. Less will want to do the work. We will replace it with robots. But being able to have somebody at home that could stay and help, because we know people, it's overwhelming for them. They
Yeah.
can't handle it and they need the help, but where are their choices? So, Janelle, if you want to kind of come on the
Yeah, I mean, in many ways we're already seeing this now, right? I mean, for the elderly who are home, or even folks who are not elderly and maybe they live by themselves. We know that there's a lot of data that AARP worked with Amazon on to collect around elderly population and the amount that they would talk to their Alexa to just have companionship. So what happens when you're able to introduce that companionship with a robot who can take care of those needs, to your earlier point? And we just have a healthcare system currently that is not sustainable for us, and as we're thinking about the future, I think that we have more opportunities that we know, both on the patient side as well as on the clinician or practitioner side. For example, some of my research has been working with clinicians in how they deliver experiences virtually, and how do you provide empathy if it's you, as to go back to VR, if it's you as an avatar, or maybe you are a clinician and you are informing the robot in how they should communicate with someone at home based on their medical history. So there's a lot of exploratory work that's being done right now, which I find super fascinating, but also just a realm of possibilities as we're moving in the future and thinking about what work robots can do, the integration of AI into machine, and then also that augmentation of both into humans, which we can get into later on.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I'm just gonna read this because I want to make sure I get it right. So, in the book, you all say that humans lean toward egalitarianism. So, ethical principles, social norms, individual and collective attitudes promoting equality. So if we lean towards that, yet, there's a move right now to go backwards, right? There's a move to go backwards to try and say, hey, let's, just let the few do this. And it brings up the kind of the question of the haves and the have-nots. So if we have robots and this technology and all this stuff, is this only going to be accessible to those who have the money, the top, 5 or 1% that can afford that? Or do you think it'll be available for everybody to use in the future?
I think it'll be like buying a car, but cheaper. I think the robots will be they'll start out around $50,000 US dollars. But many that I've looked at and I've talked to other people is that they're going for a price point of around 20 to 25. Then it'll move to 30. Over time, production process is better, right? The cost of parts go down. That if they can get it below 20, then that's, think about people buy campers and they use them like 3 weeks a year, or people buy jet skis, I mean, like, so if you can have something that can literally help you with house chores, clean, like, think about how much people pay a year. You could figure out the ROI pretty quick. Like if you have a cleaning service that comes twice a month and it's $300, I mean, that's right. It adds up. I'm saying it's like, it's a question of like, do you buy the lawnmower or do you pay the lawnmower service? Like it's what the time is valuable to you. What can it give you back? It's about capability, right? Does it have a care capability? Does it have can it homeschool? Can it help homeschool the kids, right? If you want to do something alternative, I think that it will be affordable to anybody that can spend like, $200. I think they'll figure it out, like a 5-year purchase plan, just like a car. Yeah,
Yeah.
I do.
Interesting.
I have, not that I disagree, I think I have a slightly different opinion on this. So I think
I'm the
that,
product guy, so it's a little bit, I just think of it as a product sale.
yeah, no, but I'm thinking of the strategy of it, right?
Right,
So,
right, right.
so what I can imagine happening is that to answer your question, Steve,
Yeah.
it's yes and meaning that there will be inequality, but hear me out. I think much like what we saw Microsoft do with the hardware, where they allowed for schools and essentially gave the hardware for free, if you will, um, with the intent of having an exclusive contract to make sure that that educational systems were then hooked in and were utilizing the product, and then had exclusivity around contracts, and then we're able to then upsell on the software side. What
Yeah.
I think we're going to end up seeing is something similar, and let me explain why.
Okay.
So there's so much. Take your Roomba if you have a Roomba. I don't have we don't have a Roomba, and I do not want a Roomba for a few different reasons, including this. Every time a Roomba goes through a room, it's mapping that entire room, and which means that it has data points, thousands of data points on every single room that it goes through. Now, every time you bring in a machine or a robot into, or even now, into your home to make it a smart home, you're providing it data points that then that company can around wrap that data around other products and then sell those. So what we're going to see is that you might be able to get the hardware for free, but you also might find that in order to get upgrades, to have a more premium service plan, to be able to, if hopefully if we can get there, have ownership over your own data in which the robot may use. I mean,
Mm.
that's really where we're going to see the have and have nots, and whether or not we're able to afford those premiums, I think is going to be a question of the future, at least for me.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I actually didn't go that far with it, but you're right. I mean, initially just getting the device out there. You're absolutely right. You don't want the family to become the product,
Right.
because what you will get, yeah, if you have a base model, right? Let's take a robot and you want to give it the homemaker module, you pay for that, right? Or you want to give them the care system upgrade because you need to do that. And maybe healthcare pays for that, right? Or partially pays for that service because instead of paying for a human, it's a whole lot cheaper to pay for a robot's subscription. Yeah, and you will subscribe to things like you have the phone, right? And it's like, how often do you up? And they'll have the chance to upgrade the bot, right? Just like you upgrade your phones.
Hmm.
I think those models are there. We could probably spend a good hour on product strategy for robots, but I think she's pretty spot on. I think there will be an initial cost, but the goal will be you'll eventually start getting, yeah, it will get really cheap to make them, and people will start getting them just like now. You still have to pay for the iPhone, right? You still pay for the service, but it's like it's a lot cheaper than it would be if you just, tried to buy something outright. Yeah, it's a lot of there's a lot of things ahead of us. You mentioned earlier people trying to go backward. I think there's always been a continued movement to stay in the past. I mean, the homesteading movement, people want to, do things on their own. I think you'll always have that. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that it's harder and harder to disconnect yourself from the system, right? To not bank with it, to debank yourself. So people will do it. Um, but it's just like, people choosing not to have a cell phone. I mean,
Yeah.
like,
Well, I think that what I noticed through the book, and it's throughout the whole book, and you bring it up many, many times, is this idea, this collective idea that,
mhm.
together we're going to do this. It's not the 1984, version where it's, one person is going to make all the decisions. But again, I think this is something I pulled out of the book where it says, we must shift away from tribalism.
Yes.
Mindset to recognize that we're all a part of the same tribe within the shared goal of surviving and thriving. So my question is this only possible with some symbiotic relationship? And you always bring up to nature, that nature goes through the whole book, climate change and nature and our planet and whatever. So
Mhm.
um, I was intrigued that these ideas that you have and this futuristic look that you do, you still really bring in these two themes, which is one, nature and our climate, or our planet, and also doing it together collectively as a society, not just being pushed down, down the road by a few.
I would offer, before Janae gets into the transform model, which is her baby, is one, we're not kind of pushed like the furthest thing you'd ever find from a socialist. There's no like social, but it is about finding, I think when we're able to like use brain connected interfaces, other ways we want to connect to each other. I think the opportunity for this is to learn more about each other, to find that there's very little. In the end, we all want to raise our families. We all want, peaceful, we want to do good work. We all want the same things. It's just how we go about it. But what's going to change, and you hear the word abundance, that takes a lot, right? There's got to be unlimited energy or other access to abundant sources of energy, and that leads us to a different world because for millennia we've been a it's been it's been scarcity versus abundance. I mean, that's where we fight over resources. If you
Right.
take that away, what happens, right? If everyone has that, just like the internet, if you democratize information in such a way or democratize technology in such a way that it's less about the acquisition of that, but it's more about the utilization of that
Yeah.
and as a people. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, I mean, for for me, I think that we overlook all of the examples that nature provides us on a daily basis of how we, even if we are different, that we can coexist. Um, and my hope, at least with thinking about the collective consciousness is how do we find, despite our differences, how do we find ways in which we can unify ourselves as a human species? And I think that a few things can help us with that. I think having a much bigger shared goal than we've had in any recent past is something that can help us to have that unification. And maybe that is around becoming an interplanetary species. Maybe it's going beyond. But we definitely need to find ways in which we can unify ourselves, and despite our differences, no matter what those differences are. When we were in COVID, I spent a great deal of time, and I always spend a great deal of time out in nature, but just looking at the biodiversity within nature and the symbiotic nature of both organic and non-organic material within nature, and just the need for that coexistence in order for the ecosystem to not only survive, but to actually thrive. And it was really that element that propelled me forward to think through what might be a model that would be more of an abundant model, to Steve's earlier terminology, but one that allows us to, instead of having a zero sum approach, like what's a positive sum approach? How can we make sure that all stakeholders are benefit in some way, and not equally, because there's no way for that to exist. We don't have models for that to exist. And if someone does, send them my way. But one in which supports everything and everyone that's involved in some way. And that includes nature as a stakeholder. You know, the reason why climate change, just even climate as an example, gets brought up in the book is because it's a great example of an overabundance of a positive feedback loop. Right? So the planet, for whatever reasons, and it doesn't matter what you believe, I don't care about that. But we know our planet is heating, and we know that that is an overabundance of a positive feedback loop. What will the planet want to do? The planet naturally, just like any other system, will want to find its equilibrium. And so it's only until we reach our threshold of that positive feedback loop that we'll start to see the negative inverse of that. And so for us, thinking about the fact that we are, whether we like it or not, we are together in a system with one another, but also with nature. How do we identify new ways of working, new ways of living, new ways of being that is not pinning ourselves against each other, is not fighting over the resources that we have on this planet, but is identifying ways in which we utilize less of those resources, and maybe even utilizing resources in a way that can give back to this planet as a stakeholder in anything that we do.
You know, as leaders, it kind of what we see now is kind of this overwhelm, of change and technology and things being done differently. And I think there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of anxiety over that. And sometimes people just want to stop, to try and, as you say, rebalance in a way. So as leaders, what do we do for those that we lead to help them, work through this and feel comfortable with it and change that mindset that we're probably headed in the right direction, as opposed to, oh my gosh, we're going down this dark hole.
Steve, you want me to take that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a few things in which
Mhm.
I recommend folks to do, and part of the work that we've done with organizations and continue to do with organizations is first we have people unlearn what they think they know. So what are the heuristics and the biases that you are, as a leader or as the leader of a team, that you're bringing to the table? At least the ones that you can identify. What heuristics do you have around the systems that you use? What are the biases that you have around either your organization, you yourself as a leader, your team? And then where are the gaps in your knowledge for today? Once you look at that, I then say start to reach out to folks and maybe do a short listening tour so that you can also uncover blind spots that you might have in your thinking around what even you're portraying as a bias or as a heuristic. And from there, then look at all of them and say, what is still serving you well? And then what can you leave at the door? Like, what is not serving you anymore? By doing that in that initial state of reflection, you as a leader are then coming to the table saying, all right, I know that I need to make some shifts. I'm not sure what they look like. I'm not sure how they look or how they're going to present themselves as I try to reinvent my leadership style. But at least I know that this is what I want to move forward and still hold on to because it's working well, or at least it seems to work well for me and for others. And then the rest I can disregard. I then say that this is a great opportunity to introduce for yourself as well as others on your team, introduce stressors, but in a controlled way. And we like to do this so that we can build up more of an anti-fragile mindset. And the reason why, Steve, is this: like, we have gotten too comfortable. We are used to convenience. We love convenience. And we as humans naturally are used to being bombarded by stressors, but as we have gotten more comfortable in our day to day, even food delivered to our house, right? Like, convenience of having technology answer questions for us, we have gotten lazy in some ways. So to provide an environment for yourself and for your team to introduce some stressors, maybe you have someone introduce a deadline that you're not aware of. Maybe it is that you run a scenario, and we run them sometimes in VR, sometimes not in VR, but run a scenario for the team of how might you come up with new team dynamics and heuristics to make quicker decisions. And the reason to do this in a controlled environment and to do this in small little ways is that you allow people to start to feel a little more comfortable and pushing beyond their edge, and for them to almost reimagine where their edge could be. And I find this to be vital because right now we know that companies are waiting to see when the next Black Swan event will be, and how can they really prepare themselves as an organization as well as prepare their leaders for that next Black Swan event. Because how we saw people respond during COVID was not how companies obviously wanted to respond. And so there's a bit of that organizational preparedness that's happening now. So I would say that those are some, whether it's you or your organization, those are some really great first steps to start to build up that capacity.
Yeah, and you refer to that in the book as kind of future proofing or building more resilient organizations so that and you're exactly right. I mean, we all know that if we are always in our comfort zone, not much progresses. We need to be outside that comfort zone. So, yeah, finding ways to accept that as more normal and be okay with it, is probably the way to help your people see the future.
Absolutely. Steve, you want to build off of that at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So tell us a little bit too about, when you think about, when you wrote this book, and as I said, there's so much great information here. What would be, for a person who picks up this book and reads it, what do you want their takeaway to be? I mean, it would be hard unless you're in the categories you guys are in to understand all the details, everything in that book. But if I'm going to read that book, what do you want my takeaway to be?
There is hope that this things might seem chaotic, um, even desperate. People might have lost their job. People might not know how to lead the organization. People might not know what to do or how to navigate this with, but I promise you, we're gonna get through this.
Mm.
And the thing is that you should be more excited than ever that with hope, there's also the opportunity to reinvent yourself, the opportunity to find a new way of working that makes you more efficient so you can go home at 5, a way of learning new skills that, and do make it makes the space to do the things you've always wanted to do, the hard, and even to tackle hard problems. So that's the kind of message I want people to take is that
Mm.
this is all navigable. All of this. There's nothing without the bound that is out of the bounds of human capability. It's just a question of, well, desire and hope, that in a belief that if we do this, that we will get through it. And I
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you we will. And it's going to be great to be on the other side of it. And then over the next 5, 10 years, because it's going to be an exciting time to be alive, which circles back to the letter to our son and the kids now. I mean, I would love to be 10 years old again. To me, because to be 10 now, like it is awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, what awaits them is just nothing short of kind of magical, I think.
Mhm.
Janae,
Yeah,
what's
the
your
book definitely has a very positive feel. I mean, it's written in a
it's
way that, it's very positive, and I love
it's
some.
protopian. It's not utopian in that way.
Okay,
It's versus dystopian. It's protopian.
very
It's
good.
a
See, I'm learning a new word.
positive, realistic. Yeah, and that's what we hope people will get from it.
And I love some of the words that you use in describing it that I don't see in other leadership books and other things. So I admire you for using those things like holistic approach and anti-fragility. It's a good way to describe it because it does. The holistic approach is, yes, there's change and whatever, but these other things that we can also develop and improve on too that make the experience more positive.
I think the hope, and one thing I think I would add is with the Sinclairs, if you had a chance to, and we'll share a link with you, you can get the first 2 chapters free, so you can get an introduction to the prologue of the family. It's set in 2040,
Yeah,
and it's about a family named the Sinclairs, and you'll meet the whole family, but it's just like regular family. You might see things as more futuristic, but into them, that technology, everything's kind of common. But something changes in the world, is kind of an anomaly in the AI systems. Could it be a singular? We don't really kind of tell you what, because we don't want to be too prescriptive
yeah,
in that. But it does, and you see over the passage of weeks and months, like what happens, and then you will eventually see what happens to them, long term at the end of the book.
yeah,
But it introduces you to the super shifts and the things that are happening. And so many books, to your point, and I appreciate that, is they talk about the black swan. They talk about the singularity, but nobody talks about after.
yeah.
Nobody talks about dealing with it. So, Janae, you have some unique perspectives, especially on the fragility piece of this.
Yeah, what I would say is it's so easy for us to get wrapped up in our quarterly earnings and the short term lens in which we have built incentives for our organizations. And so if we can allow ourselves to have a longer view, and really take in having a holistic approach is extremely important to, at least for me, if we're going to survive, we need to have a holistic approach. Otherwise, we're not doing anything new, and we're going to repeat the same mistakes. And so again, having a bit of that mindset shift and it's a huge shift, right? Like we've built industries and legacies off of a very different model. But that shift is vital for our long-term, not only survival, but the ability to really thrive in this age of intelligence. And I will say, because when I think about my takeaway for this book, yes, I'd like it to be hopeful, but my more urgent takeaway for folks is that no one's coming to save you. This is about each and every single one of us realizing that we have agency to really shape the future. And there are a plethora of futures in which we can move into. But if each of us do something small, and we outline different things in which you can do that's small, and it's even like taking a different mindset so that you do have a more holistic approach in your decision making. Something like that is going to have a rippling effect that you won't even know of, maybe even for, a year, 5 years, 10 years. But it's those small changes that each and every single one of us need to make that is going to make the future more hopeful.
Yeah. Well, I was going along great with the Sinclairs. I was into it. Everything was fine. And then you had to throw in that systems meltdown thing that kind of freaked me out. But anyway, it was it was all good. Gotcha.
Didn't mean to stress you out, Steve.
That's fine. That's fine. I got through it. Like I said, I'm resilient. I'm learning resiliency with what to do next. So anyway, and I also enjoyed, with my background, you talking a little bit about BioNexus, the convergence of biology and technology, and how that has some huge ramifications in medicine and how we think and how we do things. And it's just, I think there's a great excitement and possibility in that area as well.
Yeah, we're seeing so much of that being experimented with now. And I'm not sure what you're seeing on your end, but I mean, when you think about, and I'll give you, I love this example. I mean, we can talk about genetic editing and, the implications and even the ramifications of that. But also as you think about children who are amputees, and the idea that that they can have bionic augmentation, which we're already seeing now, that's a mix of machine and AI. I mean, there's so much that's happening right now that's really going to propel us forward as we think about what it means to be human, and what it means to make choices as a human. And those fundamental choices actually will start to shift. So,
Yeah. And I think too, I thought as well, like you take a child who maybe has some learning disabilities or learns in a different way. And if the system or whatever you want to call it, figures out what's the best way for that child to learn and then gets that information to that child, what a game changer, right? Because it's not, when you go to school, a lot of times it's kind of what you teach to the average or the norm, but there's some outliers that maybe need something different in a very different way. So that's exciting.
Yeah, there are. I mean, that's been, we're seeing that across the board in education. Universities, many universities, their days are numbered because they're outlawing AI, but they don't, it's like the access to it. It's
Yeah.
like I read a quote last night. It was like, the Gutenberg allowed us to create text, like create, documentation, but AI allows us to create, documents. Like it's like this volumes of information, like original, creativity. I think that having kids that are on the spectrum, neurodivergent, or they're even, they're very gifted, or even just any, there's not an opportunity for them. There's no gifted and talented anymore. There's no, kids have to go to specific schools that can have more, smaller groups or one-on-one. It's like, to your point, like that is an example of the age of engines, because the whole design of that school system structure was to do two things: get children to the age of 12 or 13 so that they are literate, reading and writing, so that they could function in society. And two, so that they could work in the factory or on the farm. That was it. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, going to college was like for scholars, it was a very rare, small thing, especially for wealthy people. We might be going back to that because a lot of people, it's really about the certification, the qualification, the credential. Do they care what they take 4 years of like C's and D's, get the degrees, right? What's going to happen? So I think there's going to be there has to be bold, and this is our opportunity is, right? There has to be bold choices in how we educate the children because that is going to ripple through how the workforce changes, how everything else is viewed, and how we look at credentialing, verification of like their intelligence, their ability to do the work. It's a lot in flux, but again, if somebody's willing to take the leap, I think there's a lot of parents out there and a lot of people that would want to do it.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Well, in anticipation of our discussion today, like I'm thinking there's still so much that I want to ask, I want to get in, but time is going to be a restraint for us. So,
Always a part two. It's always a part two.
exactly. Okay, great. But anticipation of our discussion, is there anything that I haven't asked or haven't covered that you for sure want to get into the program today?
That's a big question, Steve. So for me, the big question that or at least the thing that I want to talk about is how do you, as an individual, start to move forward? And it doesn't even have to be from a leadership perspective, just what are some of those next steps? And maybe I'll ask Steve this. So like we've talked about this, Steve Fisher, from a leadership perspective. So what would you do, whether or not it's within the organization or not, but what would you do if you were trying to move that? And let's just take the organization. What would you do to move that organization forward, and not necessarily just for yourself or your team?
I think there's a level of activation. I think I'd have to really assess, you'd really want to assess the organization's readiness for this type of transformation. We talk about digital transformation, a lot of companies trying to swap out. It's the same thing as business model, you know, it- process. What is it? What does it be? Business process re-engineering or something from the 90s. It's the same thing, but there's a little bit more systemic work here. Yeah, I wasn't ready to answer this question, but I'm giving it my go.
So I threw it at you. It's my curveball.
Um, yeah, I could get into like there's the layers of leadership in this, but not to give it try and pitch a course to the audience, but I think that a couple things. There's a readiness for adaptation that a company needs to understand what is its real maturity to do that, right? Second thing would be to run through a lot of scenarios. We call them spectrum scenarios. Like, what is long-term strategic planning here? What does it look like from an organizational perspective? And three, to actually adopt futures thinking and work into the organizational process, to not just not to be reactive to things. And I think, that's about that's the shortest answer without turning this into like, a Coursera course on it. But I think, yeah, I think and we have a link here to an action toolkit. I think it's about readiness. People can kind of look at what they're prepared and not prepared for. Because I think the biggest thing is the don't know, you don't know part. And I think we're trying to show people that to make them realize they know that they don't know. Because a lot of times there's just not even an awareness at this point for people.
There was a quote in the book that I highlighted just because I'm such a believer in mentorship, and the quote is, "Nature is the ultimate mentor." So I thought that was profound. So
Yeah, I think that was yours, Janae.
Oh yeah.
The wisdom quote was mine. That one's yours, definitely.
Yeah.
yeah, what was your wisdom quote?
Oh, the one that you read, the one that you wrote, that may have the technology, but we need the wisdom. It's the same.
Right,
Like
got it.
that's one I've used a lot in the
Yeah,
past. It finally found its way into a book.
yeah.
So
All right. Good, good.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question. So I'm going to end here with this. So, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today? Ja-Nae, you want to go first?
Yeah, I would say know that you know less than you think.
Yeah.
And that's okay because you're not alone. And come to this age of intelligence with an open heart and a curious mind. And just know that there's so many other people that are trying to explore what the future can look like. And come join us as we try to figure that out together.
Okay. Steve?
Leadership is not just books and quotes. It's action. It's setting an example. It's also being fearful, but being fearless. Fearful of the things you need to understand that you need to deal with, but fearless in the way that you have to meet them.
Okay. Thank
No
you.
chat GPT help here.
Okay.
That's from the heart, man.
That's great. Well, again, the book is called SuperShifts, and I presume you can order that on Amazon and anywhere else you get books.
Yep.
Anywhere else you want to direct people to if they want to look into this further?
Yeah, a Super Shifts book. Then a supershiftsbook.com is kind of the big page, gives you a lot more detail, has the links to order it. And then I will double check, there should be a strip in there you can like put your email in and get the first 2 chapters free. So that way you can kind of go
Great.
right to the heart of it. So,
Okay. Well, thank you. Well, you two, this has been a real pleasure. It's a fascinating book. I just my mind was kind of blown reading this, and it was great, and I learned a lot, and realized, as Jade, you said, I have a lot more to learn. So that's good. But it's been great talking to you too, and I'm just sitting here wondering, man, the discussion at your dinner table must be just fascinating. So maybe someday I can sit there and just be marveled at hearing you two talk about all these great ideas. But anyway, thanks for your time today. It's been really great. I appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of luck with the book and your continued work in this area. So thank you.
Steve,
thank you for your
thanks
time.
so much for having us.
Thanks, Steve.
Take
Appreciate it.
care. Hope we meet down the road someday.
Yes.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.